Payday 3, the long-awaited sequel to the hit game Payday 2, released on September 21st, 2023, 10 years after the release of Payday 2. Over the next 2 weeks, it sold 1.5 million copies and amassed an incredible $50 million. This led to the developers, Starbreeze Studios, to even celebrate that the game had already made its cost back in such a short time. However, the hype of the game quickly began to fade as it was hit with community backlash almost instantly. On launch day, Payday 3 was affected by constant server issues as thousands of potential players were trying to launch it for the very first time. Normally, something like this wouldn't have been a problem, as its predecessor Payday 2 featured an offline system that would allow players to play without having to be connected to the server. Unfortunately, Starbreeze Studio decided to make Payday 3 a completely online game, which forced all players to connect to the server before being allowed to play. This feature change left the community in disbelief. The server connection issues were so severe on launch that the CEO took to Twitter just to apologize for the issue. On top of the connection issues, Payday 3 was launched on PS5 on an older patch. That's right, the PS5 release was launched on a much earlier version of the game. The version running was the beta build rather than the finished launch build of the game. The developers would later blame this issue on Sony and claim that Sony was looking for a solution to the problem. After just a few days, Payday 3 was getting nothing but hate. From people having issues with the servers all the way down to people not liking a lot of the features in the game. This led to Payday 3 having over 18,000 negative reviews on Steam, leaving it in the top 50 most disliked games ever. While most of you that don't follow the game are probably thinking, oh well, it's mostly just connection issues, I'm sure they've turned it around by now. You are dead wrong. Payday 3 was hit with criticism after criticism due to the horrible progression system, a bland story, an overall lack of content, and an awful AI system, on top of the already existing server issues. The progression system in Payday 3 left players in utter shock as they compared it to Payday 2. In Payday 2, you were able to level up your player level, known as infamy, by completing heists. In turn, you got more or less infamy depending on the difficulty of the heist. Plain and simple. The changes in Payday 3 made it so that you no longer got any infamy for completing heists, and instead you had to complete specific challenges in order to increase it. While this might not seem like a big deal, it left the player base outraged, with most of them feeling it took out their ability to play the game however they wanted. Challenges vary from getting a certain amount of kills with a specific gun, to beating missions without being seen by a single enemy, to even just replaying and beating the same mission a plethora of times. Players complained again and again about these challenges, as they would only get infamy for completing them, meaning if they completed the heist without doing any of them, they would get 0 infamy. Players then complained that on top of having to not only complete the challenges, that if they didn't have any friends on to play with, it was virtually impossible to complete the stealth challenges in the game. With the game being completely online with no offline capacity, they'd be required to either group up with random real players or play with the AI companions. While it is possible to convince a group of real people to do a stealth mission, it is highly unlikely. People want to play a game like this their way, which in all fairness, they should be allowed to do. To go along with these complaints, the lead producer stated in an update livestream on September 25th that they currently had no plans to change the progression system, which left a lot of players outraged. That comment had such a bad backlash from the community that on October 4th, merely a week after, they stated on another update livestream that they heard the community and were now working on a bunch of changes to the progression system. However, the change to the system wouldn't come until November 30th, and by then, the damage had already been done. Another issue players were having in the game was the Atrocious AI. Notably, most players don't seem to have any issue with the enemy AI, as for the most part they kind of just run at you and allow you to shoot them. The real issues come from the AI companions. Another big feature change from Payday 2 to 3 was that players no longer had the option to disable AI companions. This left players frustrated as the AI companions were absolutely horrible to deal with. Players were unable to control AI with voice commands, something modders had been able to accomplish in Payday 2 years ago. The AI would often just run off into the middle of a firefight and die when they were carrying loot for the players. The AI would refuse to revive down teammates, and they would sometimes just run out of the map with loot to an area that players simply couldn't get to and stop moving. So to say that players disliked them is an understatement. To most, it felt like the developers were forcing players to play with real people instead of solo with AI, and to be fair, they probably were. On top of the other issues players had with the game, there was also the fact that there was a severe lack of content on launch. Now notably, Payday 2 had the same issue on release, however that was over 10 years ago, so the community had come to expect just a little bit more. On launch there were only 8 different heists, around 21 weapons, and a severe lack of cosmetics. Now starting at the cosmetics, there were 25 normal masks and 11 customizable masks. Now that seems like a fair amount for launch, but what annoyed players is the crazy level wall they were locked behind. To unlock any customizable mask, you had to be over level 100, which tasked along with the ever-idiotic challenge level system, players just couldn't be bothered. With the normal mask, you only start with 11 and then unlock the rest through levels 5 to 99. On top of the masks, there were also only 6 different suits, and then each one had multiple different color variations. Player found these incredibly lazy, as a big point made by the game are the mask and the suit. On the covers of both Payday 2 and 3, you're drawn in by the clownish looking masks and suits that go along with them. So for them to neglect both of these, just rubbed the community the wrong way. Nextly, onto the maps. There were only 8 maps on launch compared to Payday 2's current 66. Now I understand not wanting to reuse maps and all from Payday 2 just to have more maps in the game, but what I personally don't understand is the decision from developers when they finally did add new maps. On November 30th, they added 2 new maps to the game, both of which were just reskin maps from Payday 2. Understandably, the community found this to be completely underwhelming and just lazy, as they refused to add new content and were instead just trying to take it from a previous game. The term underwhelming also just so happens to define how most players thought about the pool of weapons in the game. Of the 21-ish weapons on launch, they only consisted of a base weapons like assault rifles, SMGs, marksman rifles, shotguns, pistols, and a sniper. The reason people were so annoyed by this is because Payday 2 offered all these options and so much more. They had an extensive list of melee weapons, explosive weapons, LMGs, and even a flamethrower. The lackluster list given as choosable weapons in Payday 3 was a complete turnoff for a lot of players. I mean, with this and all the other complaints the majority of the community had with the game, there was really no reason to play Payday 3 over Payday 2. Lastly would be the issues people had with the story. Following the White House heist in Payday 2, the gang took all their money and retired. To start Payday 3, some of the people they wronged in the past find out they're alive and try to kill them. Along with this, all of their accounts were frozen, meaning they no longer have any money.
Good thing I was able to reach you guys. The whole thing moved so fast I almost didn't connect the dots in time.
Yeah, thanks for the heads up. Shade, right?
Don't worry about it. I made a promise to Bane to watch your backs.
Yeah. Great, you saved us. Whoop-de-doo. What the fuck happened?
Wankers tried to snuff us all, that's what fucking happened.
It was carefully planned. All the attacks happened at the same time.
And they froze our accounts. I checked. We're broke. All of us.
It's a conspiracy theory.
Well, it's happening, so it's an actual conspiracy. Motherfuckers.
Whoever did this is extremely well connected, and you've pissed off more than a few powerful people over the years. I'll start digging, but it's gonna take some time.
What happened to the others?
I reached out to everyone, but I only got through to the 5 of you.
So much for retirement. We're gonna need cash to get back at these assholes.
I've got the perfect job to get you started. And I got you some supplies. Check the crate behind you.
Lady, I like you already. Alright, enough talking. Let's get to work.
After this, the story gets incredibly repetitive as the gang just tries to figure out who tried to kill them and froze all their assets, and on the other side, the enemies just keep trying to kill them. Once the gang finally finds out who did it, they just try to destroy her reputation until eventually it just ends up with her supposedly killing herself. Then another enemy is introduced.
In breaking news, business mogul Patricia Shark is facing allegations of bank fraud and even possible corruption charges following the discovery of several leaked documents.
Bastards.
No! God, no!
Is it done? Excellent.
The community found this to be incredibly boring as the story just feels forced with no actual connection. To defend the developers a little bit, I do believe the community should give them a little grace as it is a live service game, meaning the story isn't exactly over yet. They could wrap everything together in a really good story that just takes a little while to produce, but you never know. All in all, Payday 3 was not only one of the biggest letdowns in 2023, it was also one of the biggest letdowns in gaming history. With its predecessor amassing thousands upon thousands of dedicated fans, most players had high hopes as they waited around 10 years for this game to come out. Yet, it fell short in almost every category and ended with most players abandoning the game, leaving it with less average players than its predecessor. The failure of Payday 3 also led to Starbreeze Studios releasing their CEO, as they were constantly failing to meet benchmark numbers set for the game. While they keep trying to update and bring new players in, they keep failing and falling short time after time. Unfortunately, because of the live service model that was incorporated, the game will eventually waste too much money and shut down. Due to these issues and all the fans abandoning the game, Payday 3 will forever be marked as one of the largest failures in gaming history. Anyways, thanks for watching, drop a like if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.